Good morning, BookTube. Coming to you from not an unusual filming location, because we've been here before, but one of the most challenging, and that is inside our car. And if I probably can't turn the camera round while I'm filming, so I'll just do another clip to show you what this morning's weather is like. What you're looking at now are the frost crystals, the ice crystals on the front windscreen of our car. And you might be thinking, what on earth are you doing coming out here to film? Well, it's because the sunshine is forecast. And I just felt like being outside in the fresh air. I haven't been for a while, but I couldn't think of an outdoor location where I could film with books and not get soaking wet, because it has been raining kind of perpetually for the last, it feels like 2 weeks, but it's probably less than that. But long enough for me to know that there is nowhere I could go properly outside where it wouldn't be wet, and I wanted to talk about books. New angle. But when I choose to film in the car, the tricky thing is this tripod. I really can't stand it up anywhere. So I end up holding it, and we're going to have some challenges. And I suppose what I've really got to explain now that I'm on camera is, why are we not doing a Middlemarch meditation? Why have I not announced a Middlemarch meditation? Well, there's two reasons. And it's not the lack of time as such. I could have got a script ready in time. It's really more lack of mental energy. So I'll just explain the situation that caused me to take a little break at the end of January and early February. I thought that situation would come to an end about that time, but it is extending itself. So it's meant that I have very busy work days with very, very high levels of concentration. I've got to work fast and I've got to work accurately, and I can't control the volume of work that comes to me. So you probably, if you have a similar job, you know that kind of situation. And also, I really can't, I could take vacation time if I had a need. It's not a case of I can't take vacation time. I could. But the situation advises me that I should only take time off if I need to. So taking extra time, let's say, so that I can write a script when I feel fresh and awake. That's not really possible. So I do a lot of my script writing in the evenings after work. And just at the moment, I just don't have that kind of energy for the research and the analytics that go into bringing you a Middlemarch meditation. And please don't worry, the situation is temporary. It's just, I can't control its shape. So for the time being, I'm just going to take it easy. I didn't feel like doing a tag. Obviously, that would be my usual go-to when I'm tired or running behind. But tags, the questions tend to be either retrospective, or they're asking what-if questions that you have to think about. And I just felt this very strong impulse. No, what I'll do today is we'll just have the kind of video I pretty much never do, which is a more immediate, chatty, what's going on right now in my bookish life. I'll talk to you about what I'm reading right now, briefly, no details, because that will come in reviews. And then maybe you can help me now, because I've got to choose books for reading in March. It's about the time that I think about that. And also, I want to talk about some videos that I've really enjoyed recently, and shout out to some channels. So, what are we reading right now? We got 3 books that are underway. We just finished Why We Sing. You have all seen the video for that. So that was my first non-fiction. As you know, I read about 4 books a month, so you're going to really hear about 3 books now. The remaining 3 that I think it's going to take me the rest of February to finish. The first one, let's see if I can hold up to camera okay. And I may need to do this a little bit to fit it in. There we go. This is a book a lot of people will recognize. Miss Smilla's Feeling for Snow by Peter Haig. This was published early 90s, but when it came out, it was a big sensation. And I'm pretty sure this copy, which I own and have owned for probably 30 years, I most likely bought it while the furore was going on. I thought, what's this Miss Smilla's Feeling for Snow? What is this book about? I must buy it. So I bought it. It sat on my shelves. I've I've lent this book to someone else who's read it and said it's fantastic and given it back to me. And can you see why this book needed to go on my alphabet soup list? I just thought, why haven't you read this? Is there any reason, any justifiable reason why you haven't read this? And it's proving to be quite fascinating. Where am I now? I'm on page like 176, so a little over halfway through. And yes, I'm gripped, but I will have more to say about that. I'm not going to go on too much in this video. This is literally just saying, hey, here's where it is right now. What bookmark am I using? I'm using a bookmark from a place I've never been. It's from the Greek island of Rhodes, and it has a map of the island. I've never been to Rhodes. Where did I get this bookmark? Library sale, I think. I don't know where they got it, but there you go. That's my strange way of acquiring bookmarks. And then also in fiction, what I can't show you, I'll probably put a cover picture up on screen because I'm reading it on my mobile phone, which is filming me right now. I'm reading The Story of the Lost Child, and that's the fourth book of the Neapolitan Quartet by Elena Ferrante. It's interesting. I'm glad that the fourth book is the fourth book because one feels more obligated to finish a fourth book when one has read books 1, 2, and 3. But I am finding aspects of the text frustrating for me. That doesn't mean it's not a good book, because when I pick it up, I still read multiple chapters without much effort. So there you go. It says something, but we'll talk about that again when we finish. Let's go to nonfiction now, because I'm reading it is a difficult nonfiction book in two senses. One, the subject matter is emotive, and right now in our current sort of lean to the right political situation, which seems to be happening pretty much everywhere, there's a lot of talk about this, and it upsets me. So it normally I would have trouble reading it, but I really felt the book had to be read, and that one is let me just lean over here. That's Judith Butler's Who's Afraid of Gender. Now, I misunderstood what this book was about. I thought that it would be talking about the science behind sexuality and gender identity, because I knew that Judith Butler had done a lot of work on that. But this is not what this book is. This book is, I think, playing on the Edward Albee play title, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf? And I can only remember that play barely. I read it once, but I remember that the main characters had some kind of imaginary child. So they were living with an illusion that they played out in front of complete strangers, and it took the strangers a little while to realize, hang on, they're making all this up. This isn't real. And I think what Judith Butler is addressing is what she calls a phantasm, an illusion that is being created politically that is focusing on gender, because she happens to be an expert on gender. So although she includes race, she includes it just to say this could be included, but she doesn't wade in, and I think that's because it's not her area of expertise. But she says these two issues are being focused on by that ultra-right political interest. And in particular, she talks about evangelical Christians and the Vatican and other Christian interests that are working behind the politics. And she just says that they're working with a phantasm. She shows that their way of looking at gender and sexuality has no rationality to its arguments, isn't based on any facts, and it rejects facts, it rejects discussion and thinking. This will be no surprise to a lot of people. I'm not sort of saying, "Ooh, are you surprised?" I know no one is surprised, but to hear her spell it out in considerable detail is good, but it is not easy writing. It is writing for her academic colleagues. It is at that level. She's not playing around in the cheap seats, so to speak, literarily speaking. So the prose is difficult, but there is great amount of detail, and it's also disturbing because I didn't realize the degree to which, I suppose, some evangelical Christian interests and interest groups are influencing not only the government in the country that they live, but governments overseas. That was quite disturbing to learn about. But I continue to read it. It is good to understand that it's happening. But I have to read it very slowly, sort of take a chapter, then stop to digest the horrible reality, and then go on and read another chapter. It's a bit like that. But I appreciate what she's telling me. So that's the nonfiction. So that's everything I'm reading. Now, what I'd love you guys to do is just help me, because I got to figure out, what do I read in March? I don't need help deciding every book that I'm going to read in March. I do have one commitment nailed down. I'm going to do a buddy read in March with Meg from Books Off the Beaten Path, and together we're going to read this, which is, let's see if I can get the name right, because I watched the author say his own name several times. Jon Avida Lindqvist. Jon Avida Lindqvist. In fact, he ran the middle name and the last name together very quickly. So I had to listen again and again. Jon Avida Lindqvist. And it is Let the Right One In. And booktubers will recognize that title. Everybody's been talking about it. I have owned this copy for, I don't know how long. Well, let's see. I don't know what year it was published. It's definitely secondhand. But that doesn't mean anything, because this book has been popular. So first published in Great Britain in 2007. I reckon I bought this before BookTube, but I'm not sure. It might have been in that shadow time when I was watching BookTube, but hadn't decided to make a channel, because I'm sure that this would have been talked about by someone, somewhere, several someones. And I thought it's a vampire story, and I like vampire stories. As I say, even though I'm a coward and horror scares me, I like vampire stories. I'm fascinated by this one and what's being said about it. So Meg and I are going to read it. I feel that a buddy read might help me, it might help my cowardice somewhat, to know that someone else is being frightened at the same time. Does that make any sense? I don't know. So we got one work of fiction sorted. Usually I read 2 fiction, 2 nonfiction to make up my 4 books in a month. So I've got another fiction, and I've got options, and I'm finding it hard to make up my mind. So I don't know. I'll throw it out there. You can give your opinion, should you have one. Joseph Francis Burton sent me a couple of books, and they arrived in sort of early mid-January. And I'm looking at them because they're both fiction. I didn't realize, I actually thought one of them was nonfiction, Joe, but now that I read the back covers more closely and start flipping through, I think, oh no, I have 2 works of fiction. So one is F. Sionil Jose. Hang on. I'm not going to pick up on the microphone if I do that. Put on. And this is one of a series of novels. Joe's reading through the whole series, but this is the first one. And it covers the history of the Philippines, but obviously it's fictionalized, and so it probably will be more localized, I'm guessing, but I've yet to find out. And I'm kind of fascinated and thinking, oh, Joe's really enjoyed these, and they're also extremely hard to obtain. And I mean, I had to go myself looking online, and I thought, yes, I could obtain this book online if I didn't mind what I paid for it. I mean, sometimes I will spend a little extra money, but it was a lot of extra money. So I was really grateful for this book. And I do want to read it in 2026. I don't want it to go and languish somewhere on a shelf. And then there's also, he sent me a second one, which I'm going to try and hold it. I'm going to have to just get out of the way. This is so difficult. Hold it up. When a Woman Rises. And that is by Christine Aber. So Christine Aber. A book about a Mayan community in Mexico, and I haven't tried to learn more than that, but again, both fascinating. So that's sitting there sort of exerting its gentle pressure, because obviously I would like to read it. I love that the sun's coming in. It's like the sun. We haven't seen it for so long. So I would like to read one of those 2. Nevertheless, I've also got these fantastic library books that I'd really like to read. I've been going to our library and finding little treasures hidden away. And this book I actually took out 3 weeks ago, and it's just been sitting in my book bag, and I could have taken it back yesterday, but I didn't, because I just thought I'd really like to read this sometime. And it is the book Such Sweet Thunder by Vincent O. Carter. Now, Vincent O. Carter was a Black American writer, born in the early part of the century, I think is the 1920s, died in the 1980s. So much of his youth would have been spent in what was called Jim Crow America. He grew up in Kansas City, Missouri, that area. And so this book is taking his lived experience and turning it into some fiction, probably with some embellishments, focusing on a protagonist that he calls Amerigo Jones, and how he grows up in that environment. And I thought, yeah, I keep peeking at bits of the text and reading it and going, okay, yeah, I want to read this. So I just end up not giving it back. Now that's saying there's a pull there, and maybe I should just respond to that pull. And this one is not so much of a pull exactly, but I went in with a name in mind. I kept thinking, Adrian Tchaikovsky. Been hearing a lot of people talk about Adrian Tchaikovsky as a science fiction writer, and I thought, well, that could be a new name I could look into. So our library is small. I don't always hold out my chances for finding just what I want when I go in there. But I did go through the A to Z section of authors, and I found Adrian Tchaikovsky. And this is a very short book called Saturation Point. That's what they had. Now, okay, so I didn't get my choice. I knew about Children of Time, I think is a title people keep talking about, and I would have liked to have found that, and maybe I'll find that at another branch if I get some time to visit. But I've got this one now. I signed it out, and so I was thinking, oh, well, why not take advantage? Because it might move to another branch next time. If I take it back, I won't necessarily find it again if I go looking for it. That's how the county libraries work. They circulate books, particularly books that might be in high demand. Ooh, now the sun is definitely coming up over the roofs, so we're going to get some interesting lighting effects here. Okay, that's library books and the books that I've got from Joe. I could also, because I do have to try, or I've aimed to read at least one Alphabet Soup TBR book every month. In February, as you saw, that was Miss Miller's Feeling for Snow. So in March, I could ignore all these other book options, and for my fiction choice in March, I could just pick something from that list. If I do that, what I will bear in mind is I'm reading Let the Right One In, definitely, and that's a bit scary. What I should pick as an alternative piece of fiction should be lighter in feeling, in tone, in theme, in subject matter, something, not horror. Definitely not horror. So the one I have in mind, if I choose to go this way, is by a Norwegian writer. So there we go. We'll be reading a Swedish writer with a vampire story, and Jostein Gaarder, the Norwegian writer, and his book Maya. I don't even know if you can see the cover now because of the sunshine, but it's Maya. And I don't know what this book is about. I know my father probably gave this to me because he read all of Jostein Gaarder's books, loved them all. I think I've read Sophie's World, and I like that very much. And so he probably thought, oh, give Heather whatever he was reading at the time. This probably was what my dad was reading whatever year it was, and he gave it to me and said, oh, this is fantastic. You've got to read it. He did that with a lot of books. I couldn't keep up with him because he was more of a read everything by one person kind of reader. And I was different. I had to tell him, I'll get bored, Dad. I'll get bored. Okay, so that's all the options for fiction. I mean, that's not all the options. There's lots and lots of other options, but you have to narrow things down, right? I've narrowed it down to that little group. I've got to pick from among those. Let's just assume, for argument's sake, that I pick 2 works of fiction that aren't on my Alphabet Soup TBR. That means I've got to think, can I pick one of the few non-fiction titles off that TBR list? There aren't many. I do have one, though, and it is calling to me. And that book, here we go, we slide over again and we hold up Slow Productivity by Cal Newport. This was a gift. Georgie gave me this book, I think, for Christmas. Oh, well, she'll know now, and she'll go, I gave it for your birthday. Don't you remember anything? No, I don't. I don't, sadly. But this book has been looking more and more relevant to my work situation at the moment because things are so busy. And I've wondered, I'm not normally a self-help book person. I've said that on tags. And this one, probably I wouldn't have picked it up for myself. But now that it's here and it's on my shelves and I keep looking at it because of the kind of days that I'm having, I'm thinking, would it hurt to read it and just see if there's even a couple of things that I can take from it that are useful? Because if there's even that, it'll have been worth the read. And maybe there's something more in there. We will find out. But it is really pulling on me. So I have a funny feeling that my Alphabet Soup TBR from March, the selection, will be this. That leaves me with a second non-fiction book to pick. And here again, I have options and I'm not really sure which way to go. And the first one is Alone from an MK Dons fan. Haven't talked about that person for a long time, but they have allowed me to borrow this book, which I'll hold up to camera again, which is Champagne and Shambles by Catherine Beale. Interesting book which focuses on a particular aspect of 19th century English history, and that is the country house and the landed gentry and how their fortunes rose and then declined from about, from about the 1830s rose, mid-century were doing really well, toward the end of the century still doing well but cracks showing, and then as you get toward the beginning of the 20th century those cracks just get bigger and bigger. It was an unwieldy way to live and too financially demanding to be continued. And then there's the problem too of when you hand down a fortune from generation to generation, you cannot necessarily guarantee that every generation will be savvy in how they look after that, or that that's even what they're interested in doing. And so what this book is taking is one family, the Arkwrights, and just charting them over several generations to see how did their fortunes go and why did they go the way that they did. And I'm fascinated because I'd like to know the details, the economic details of why did things work when they did work and why did things not work when they didn't. And the second option for my second nonfiction book, is everybody keeping up because even I'm having trouble, is a library book. And I picked this up yesterday and it just drew me. I just thought, what a niche area to go and investigate. The book is by Tim D. and it's called 4 Fields. And I thought, what? I had to pull it off the shelf. I just saw that on the spine. I thought, what? What are you talking about? And let me get my notes here because this is interesting. What D does is he takes a look at something that even the poet Wordsworth once called visionary dreariness. That is just a view of a field. And it just seemed to me like such a bit of lateral thinking to approach nature writing by getting right down to this strange unit of geography that we call a field. And he's gone to 4 different locations: Cambridgeshire, which is where he lives, Zambia, the Ukraine, and Montana. And he's gone to visit 4 different fields. And I'm curious to find out, how is he going to have enough interesting things to say? But I just have this feeling that he will, and that I will gain some knowledge that I couldn't possibly have gained any other way. And I'm going to just go to the back of the book where there is a quote from Walt Whitman that I think might have inspired him to write the book. Let's see if I can find it here. Here we go. Grass seeds and broken stems and leaves get stuck in the lining of my boots on almost every crossing of a field. When my walking herbarium gets too prickly, I pick the seeds from the weave. All the 4 fields have met at my feet. I shake them out, my coup de grace, sowing onto my little back lawn at home the seeds from half a mile away and from thousands of miles away, reed flags and sedge heads, bushmans and step feather, prairie and timothy, my days. And I think that's what inspired the book. And I'm just be interested to understand why he wanted to do this project and what he got from it and what he has to share. So that's it for my reading part. But what I also wanted to do before I just say, cheerio, everybody, I'll be back with you in a few days and all that jazz, is I have really enjoyed watching some booktube videos over the last few days, and I just want to shout out, first of all, to Mike, whom I've mentioned. Mike at Riff Raff's Reading Renaissance is doing a series called Reading the Beloved Country, where he takes a closer look at South African literature. I've really appreciated the videos he's done so far. They're fascinating. They are bringing authors and works to my attention I had no idea existed. I love that. I love that. Secondly, Dan at Redunculous recently did a video looking at Senegalese literature. Again, watch through all that. I already have one of the titles, but at least I now know where I can come back to if I'm thinking, okay, I've read that one. What else should I be looking at? And I want to mention a new channel that I think it'd be cool for people to go check out. It's called Blind West, and I'll put it up on screen. It's the thoughts of a clearly voracious reader and also an analytical thinker, but only 19. And there's no frills to the presentation style. It's just switch on camera, talk. It's a little quiet sometimes, but it's worth listening to because it's just hearing those thoughts coming from such a young mind. If that's where they're starting, then if they stay on, we've got a BookTube sensation on our hands, I really feel. So go check them out. I'll leave a link in my description box. There'll be links to all these recommendations in my description box. And finally, there's a channel that I've been subscribed to for ages, Johanna at Me, My Dog and Books. And this week she did a really wonderful video telling people, encouraging people to use their local libraries. And it set down every product, service, activity, etc. that's offered in UK libraries. It's a very UK focused video. Nevertheless, I felt it was a really good watch because it was positive, it encouraged, it wasn't nagging, but it really made it clear just how much local libraries do for their communities. And that's certainly true in my local community. You know, our library is a social hub that offers a lot of services to people in a convenient location, as well as the books and the other things that you might typically associate with a library. So I just wanted to shout out and say, Joanna, brilliant job with that video. And I'm asking people to go and watch it to get you a few more views. And Joanna does the same thing I do. She deliberately, tactically, strategically takes books out every time she visits the library. I do that too. Even if I know I have other books lined up to be read and I'm not really planning to read the library books, I sign them out anyway to keep those book sign out figures, because they are looked at, and judgments about whether or not a library can stay open sometimes rest on a footfall through the door and books being signed out. So that's it. That's my chatty weekend. Here's what I'm reading, all the decisions I've got to make about what I'm going to read. I'll get there somehow. But if you feel like weighing in the comments, if there's a book you really liked in there and you think I should give it a go, by all means, mention that. I am going to get to work this weekend on the Middlemarch script, get it done. So that might come out midweek. I might just reschedule it slightly. We'll see how it goes. I'm playing a lot of my current life by ear, if that makes any sense at all. Just improvising as I go along, adapting to circumstances. And it's working. It's working. So I thought that's one of the reasons I thought I'll show up on this sunny day and do a chatty video. I didn't want to just take time out again because I thought, people start to worry, understandably. And it's not that bad. So I thought if I come on camera and sit in the sunshine with you, then you'll know. Here I am, still doing bookish stuff. And I'll see you again with more bookish stuff in a few days' time. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.